Now, as you may remember, last year, uh, Florida, under the rule of Governor DeSantis, put out the Stop Woke Act, which is a delightfully anachronistic, or a delightful title. I hate it so much. In recent years, we're just going to go ahead and read this real quick. So, what does the Stop Woke Act actually do? Which, by the way, Stop Woke means Stop Wrong to Our Kids and Employees Act. Ugh. It was also known as the Individual Freedom Act. Of course it was, because it removes individual freedoms. The law prohibits teaching certain concepts related to race. The prohibited teachings were that 1. Members of one race, color, national origin, or sex, or are morally superior to members of another race, color, national origin, or sex. As far as I'm aware, literally no one was teaching anything kind of this, except that, like, maybe some white nationalists in the hills. Florida doesn't have any hills. Swamps. 2. A person by virtue of his or her race, color, national origin, or sex is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. Again, I don't think anybody was actually teaching this because of the word person there. There is systems that are inherently sexist, racist, etc., or oppressive, but nobody was actually teaching anything that relates to people, individuals being of that, without, I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. A person's moral character or status as either privileged or oppressed is necessarily determined by his or her race, color, national origin, or sex. I imagine they're going to be saying that a lot, just as a heads up, that particular grouping of phrases. Again, don't think anyone's teaching this except the white nationalists. Members of one race, color, national origin, or sex cannot and should not attempt to treat others without respect to race. This one is their attempt at getting at intersectionality and their attempt to stop you from using an intersectional analysis, which I think pretty much shows their inability to understand those concepts at all. So let's say somebody is white, Australian, and girl. They should not attempt to treat others without respect to. Well, hold on. They should not attempt to treat others without respect to. So, no respect because of their race, color, national origin, or sex. The way they worded that, I think, is weird. I think there should probably be another respect in there. Treat others without respect, semicolon maybe, with respect to. But anyways, I'm just getting off from the weeds here. Basically, like that white, tanned Australian girl treating someone without respect because of any of their race, color, national origin, or sex. I don't know. Is this them doing intersectionality wrong? Or am I just being silly? It's probably both. A person, by virtue of his or her race, color, national origin, or sex, bears responsibility for or should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment. Again, nobody is asking about this, for fuck's sake. Even, the only people I can think of who are doing this are, white supremacists or, black Islamicists or maybe Nation of Islam types, maybe. The exclusionary reactionists. Or exclusionist reactionaries. Sorry, sometimes I say things backwards quite a lot, and today looks like it's going to be one of those days. 5. A person, by virtue of his race or her race, color, national origin, or sex, bears responsibility for, or should be discriminated against, or receive adverse treatment because of actions committed in the past by other members of the same race. Okay, so this is the idea of, like, white guilt, right? That you cannot teach white guilt. White guilt is kind of on the person who feels it, right? I don't feel guilt for anything that happened in the past of America because I wasn't there for it. I don't have guilt surrounding what past Americans and British people or Northern Europeans or anything like that have done because I didn't do it. Just hit my fucking microphone. Because I didn't do it. So it's just, this kind of feels this kind of feels a bit like they're being the ones putting something out there. You know what I mean? 6. A person, by virtue of his or her race, color, national origin, or sex, should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment to achieve diversity, equity, or inclusion. So I think what they're talking about in this particular one is they're trying to hint at like affirmative action, right? Like the idea that if you have two exact same candidates for a position and one of them has been a subject of systemic inequality, they get the preference versus the person who has not. I don't have a take on it. Seems fine to me. A person, by virtue of his or the inclusion of those people, like the idea that you take a black person over a white person if they're all perfectly identical, I don't care. Because in practice, that doesn't happen. Never does. There's no such thing as two exactly the same people. And the science and studies have been done to show that there is already a very heavily biased what am I thinking of? Sorry, my brain has been all over the place the last couple of days. Weeks, actually. That's why I haven't been streaming, fun fact. Because I can't fucking get my thoughts in order. Scientific studies have shown that there are biases against people with female or ethnic sounding names in the hiring process, even if they utilize the exact same resumes. Women and people of color get discriminated against more likely than cis white sounding guys do when it comes to resumes in a blind without images type of thing. And we could pull those up and go over them, but I don't feel like it. You guys can go do that. You can do whatever you want. Number 7. A person, by virtue of his race, his or her race, color, sex, national origin, bears personal responsibility and must feel guilt, anguish. Again, this is bullshit. Nobody was doing this. It's just fucking outlawing the idea of white guilt. Such virtues as merit, excellence, hard work, fairness, neutrality, objectiveness, and racial colorblindness are racist or sexist, or were created by something blah 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 blah. Okay, so the law prohibits teaching certain concepts. All of what we have just said were outlawed by this act, which means that you can't teach the concept of white guilt. You can't teach the concept that meritocracy is not a thing. Like, you have to teach that meritocracy is a thing without any further analysis of it. Okay. So then we'll go down. The law was challenged by both students and professors. A federal judge temporarily blocked the law. Let's see. State cannot restrict viewpoints on curriculum. Students have a right to receive information. Rejected the comparison to discrimination laws. Academic freedoms. Florida attempting to create Ministry of Truth. Well, all of that is true. Okay, this article was published in November, so this doesn't have any of the updated stuff. So this is an older article. Okay. Now that we have understood what the Stop Woke Act does, which is basically make it so you can't teach anything at all, basically. This is a pamphlet delivered by DeSantis's goons. Freedom from indoctrination. Again, this is Florida education will include history of the Holocaust and African Americans, but it will not include anything that has CRT principles, which is, of course, critical race theory, which is like a huge bedrock of theory and of historical understanding that has been going on for decades now. When did CRT first? When was critical theory? Critical theory origins. Critical theory. (1937). Max Horkheimer. Bet that name's going to come up later. Just saying. But yeah, like, critical theory originated in the early 1900s from, like, Marx and, and then in, like, postmodernism. Anyway, we have done critical theory in the past on this channel. Go look up a bunch of the learning leftism videos that I did last year. They will give you a better idea of what to look at when we're talking about critical theory and that sort of thing. So you can study Hispanic and women's contributions to the U.S., civics, character, and mental health education, conservation of natural resources, and includes many new required components of African American history education. We'll see about that. It deems CRT training to be unlawful employment practices. Okay. Florida's K through 20 students. Okay, what the hell is K through 20? I honestly don't know. I thought it was K through 12. Okay, so it includes the K-20 Education Network is the nation's first high-speed, high-capacity, high-reliability network interlinking colleges, universities, and K-12 districts and libraries statewide and providing video and data. Okay, so it means, like, kindergarten through college, because we're trying to become better learned as a society, it seems like. So, okay. So K through 20 means that even college students aren't able to learn this stuff, apparently. Apparently, even after you're 18, the idea of this knowledge is too terrifying and powerful. So what we've got basically going on here is DeSantis's government has considered modern theory and the concepts regarding how we look at the world and understand our place in it as the yellow sign. And in order to keep Carcosa from infesting our world, he must ban everything. Well, holy shit, he got his wish. This is DeSantis. He looks like a sweaty potato. Florida school district begins cataloging books to comply with DeSantis's backed law. Efforts are underway in Florida counties to comply with the law championed by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, who is also the presidential frontrunner for the Republican Party. I will remind you. Manatee County School District. Aw, what a cute name for a school district. Manatee County. I wonder if it is a vegetarian county. Teachers are experiencing fear and confusion as the school district works to implement House Bill 1476, otherwise known as the Stop Woke Act, I believe. Anyways. A document provided by the district that lays out new statutory changes to HB 1467 indicates violations could be considered a third-degree felony. What does a third-degree felony mean, you might add? According to Florida statutes, the maximum sentence for a third-degree felony conviction is 5 years in prison. The judge can also give you a $5,000 fine and put you on probation for 5 years. This is true even if you are facing a first offense third-degree felony. While it is technically the least serious type of felony in Florida, felons, what are felons unallowed to do, one might ask? What can a felon not do? What can a felon not do? A felon loses certain civil rights, such as the right to vote, the rights to serve on a jury, hold public office, and restricts the issuance and renewal of some professional licenses, such as real estate and insurance. I bet you that also means teaching. So, if you are caught violating Sweaty Potato Man's new Ministry of Truth law, he will lay out that you are a third-degree felon and you lose the ability to do anything. It is unconscionable to me that teachers would be put in a position that their good deed of providing a classroom library for their students in order to instill the love of reading could possibly result in a felony, Barber told CNN. Pat Barber here is a specialist trained by the Florida's Department of Education. So even within Florida's own state system, there is friction. We find ourselves, I feel, facing down an important moment in history. But we'll get there. We will get there. The book's provision, which took effect in July after being signed by DeSantis last year, requires library media... when was this posted? January. Okay. July. Blah, blah, blah. January. Requires media resources to be approved by a school district employee who holds a valid educational media specialist certificate. I bet you that is not a common certificate, according to a June memo, according to Florida's Department of Education, which was putting out guidance memos as recently as December, last month, maybe 2 months ago almost. Selection of library materials, including classroom libraries, must be free of pornography and prohibited material under the law, suited to student needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented, and appropriate for the grade level of the age group. Basically, nebulous and vague, completely without any single factor or determination that could be reliably understood by someone trying to apply this. This is overly vague and will lead to the banning of basically anything that the person who is looking at this thinks about. Consider that this is vague on purpose. Maybe, just maybe, they are trying to be overly vague. because they want to ban anything that they don't like. You know that pen we keep taking out and putting stuff in? It's getting pretty hard to hold up all this fucking string, but we're getting there. A teacher, or any adult, faces a felony if they knowingly contribute or distribute egregious material, such as images which depict sexual conduct, sexual battery, bestiality, or sadomasochistic abuse. And who could be against that? Florida Education Commissioner Manny Diaz Jr. tweeted Wednesday in defense of the measure. Hold on, I need to tweet something. Okay. Sorry, had to get that out of my system. The contentious law marks one of several efforts backed by DeSantis to legislate what can be taught in Florida schools, a public stance that has boosted his national prominence as he said he would be weighing a potential 2024 presidential bid. He is going to run. He did last time, right? Just this week, Governor commented for the first time on the state's rejection of new proposed AP course on African American Studies, imposing what he called a political agenda. Now, in case you were unaware, there was an African American Studies course. Is this actually going to talk about the course? No. We're just going to keep going in circles about CNN links. Okay. The AP course was not limited to American history regarding African Americans or African American history. This is something that a lot of right-wingers have been using to twist the fact pattern to fit their needs a little bit better. The AP African American Studies course was broad, and it was an umbrella term to talk about a lot of African American issues throughout history, including political, historical, and social contexts, because it was an AP course on damn near college level. Of course it's going to be broad, because once we get out of elementary school, we're expected to think for ourselves past the ability to choose pudding or Jell-O. So, anyways, we don't need to get into that. I'll just get mad. We don't need to get super mad here. We're just talking about the fascist uprising. It's okay. We'll be fine. We will not be fine. The world is doomed. CNN has reached out to DeSantis' office for comment. Mary Masferer with the Florida Association for Media and Education asked school board members during a Tuesday meeting to give students access to books in classroom on materials being cataloged and vetted, open up the classroom libraries while the process can be done. Basically, I think the rest of this just goes into more detail. Basically, the school board is saying that they're protecting the teachers, not banning books. However, we're getting to that. Oh, look! They've banned books. Let's listen to what this local news 4 Jax has to say. Jacksonville, Florida.
Empty bookshelves at a local middle school. Parents tell News4Jax that teachers and librarians at their kids' schools were told to pack up the books for review.
Also, one quick moment. I did library work in high school. I was a librarian's assistant for like 2 years. Moving books is no small feat. It is a pain in the ass. Okay? You do not have enough stuff to move large volumes of books. We reorganized our library once, and it took us 2 weeks of constant work for the 1 hour a day that I had to move a shelf left, because we had to move everything in our library over.
So it actually blew my mind that we were living in a world where we were removing books from classrooms.
This week, schools statewide have been complying with state law requiring the approval of books in classroom libraries. News4Jax reporter Marilyn Parker joining us live from the Duval County School Board headquarters. Marilyn, is that video part of schools complying with the state law?
Yes, and News4Jax viewers have been reaching out to us about it all week. DCPS says that they are conducting formal reviews of classroom libraries. They made the announcement on Monday, but it came as a shock to lots of parents and students. They want to know when these books will be returned or replaced. During the middle of Literacy Week at Mandarin Middle School, all the books in the library were gone.
Oh, if that isn't a perfect encapsulation of our society this day. Ah, we're currently celebrating Literacy Week. How would you like to be literate today? I'd love to read a book. That'd be nice.
How do we live in a world where books are being banned from the classroom?
Brian Covey says his kids attend Greenland Pines, and the books there were also taken this week.
They said that before school, all the teachers had to pack up their stuff. The librarian apparently tearfully announced that she no longer had a resource class to do, and she had to review all the books in the school.
A teacher in Manatee County this week covered up the books in his classroom and put up a sign that reads, "Closed by
Dugong, Dugong, it's a county at home." Okay, and
order of the governor. Florida state law says teachers must cross-reference their libraries with a list of pre-approved books. A trained media specialist will vet any books that are not on the list. The law requires books to be free from pornography, instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity in kindergarten through third grade, and discrimination in a way that an individual by virtue of his or her race, color, sex, or national origin is inherently racist or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously.
I don't know a single teacher who would come across an inappropriate book in their classroom and wouldn't remove it.
Educators who violate this law could face a third-degree felony. Duval County Schools announced Monday they're taking further steps to comply with state laws. Covey says he can't blame the school district, but thinks it's punishing students.
It's hurting their education. I have a feeling it's a lot to do with the same as African American studies and in trying to control what kids can and cannot learn.
DCPS says,
which in my opinion should be up to the students. They should be able to learn about whatever they find interesting.
The district will soon provide school staff with more specific guidance on the review process.
So, as we have just seen demonstrated delightfully, you cannot have books that depict pornography. As I believe we mentioned earlier, it was, where was it? Was it this? Anyways, we saw the thing that it was like you can't have masochistic or bestiality or anything like that. Well, what about nope, not what I wanted. Is it this one? Nope, not that one. It was 2320. Sorry, I was off by a verse. She lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like that of donkeys, and whose emissions was like that of horses. So I ask you, dear viewer, does this mean that you can no longer have the Bible in Florida schools? Because, I mean, sure seems to me like there's some fucking bestiality and some pornography going on in that. And this is just the one I remember. There are dozens of things in that. So I will remind everybody. Again, we're talking about a law that is overly vague, has been applied to literally everything, and is currently removed the ability for students to even read because they can't have a book in school. What constitutes a book, I wonder? Does this pamphlet remind you of anything? Well, it did to me. As you might have noticed this in the top That's right, we're talking about Nazi book burnings. Because this, oh boy, does it remind me of some things. And we're coming up on the 90th anniversary of the Nazi book burnings in Berlin. So, let's do some history learning, shall we? Something DeSantis doesn't want you to do. If you're in Florida, you can't listen to this. Okay. In a 19th century precedent, which means the 1800s, the May 1933 book burning in Nazi Germany had a precedent in the 19th century Germany. In 1817, weird how it works in about 100-year cycles. Strange. German student associations chose the 300th anniversary of Luther's 95 Theses, and if you're not familiar with that, it's where Martin Luther, not the black guy, the German guy, walked up and nailed a bunch of pamphlets to a church wall and created an entire break in Catholicism and what was now called Protestantism. To hold a festival at Wartburg Castle in Thuringia, where Luther had sought sanctuary after his excommunication from the Catholic Church. The students demonstrating for a unified country, Germany, was then a patchwork of states, burned anti-national and reactionary texts and literature in which the students viewed as un-German. Sounds familiar, huh? Synchronizing culture with Nazi ideology. Oh, and in case you didn't pick up on it, we are reading about book burning from the Holocaust Encyclopedia from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Imagine a pretty good source. 1 second. In 1993, no. Oh boy. In 1933, Nazi German authorities aimed to synchronize professional and cultural organizations with Nazi ideology and policy. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi Minister for Popular Enlightenment and Propaganda. Whew, that's a title. Oh boy, is that a title. How long before we see that in fucking... What was the thing they called it in Florida? It's like Department of Education Media Analysis or something like that. Media training. Anyway, very similar, long, undifferentiatable titles. Began an effort to bring German arts and culture in line with Nazi goals. How would they bring in all of them together? Well, they burned them. They destroyed them. They labeled them degenerate. In an effort to synchronize the literary community, Goebbels had a strong ally in the Students' Association for the Nazi Party. German university students were the vanguard of early Nazi movement in the late 1920s and filled the ranks with their ultra-nationalism and anti-Semitism. On April 6th, the Nazi German Student Association's main office for press and propaganda proclaimed a nationwide action against the un-German spirit to climax in a literary purge or cleansing by fire. Local chapters were to supply the press with releases and commissioned articles, offer a blacklist of un-German authors. On April 8th, the Students' Association also drafted 12 Theses. Today, these would be known as tweets. A deliberate evocation of Martin Luther's 95 Theses. Declaration which described the fundamentals of pure national language and culture. Does that sound familiar? Placards publicized these theses, which attacked Jewish intellectualism and asserted the need to purify the German language and literature. and demanded that universities be the centers of German nationalism. The students described the action as a response to a worldwide Jewish smear campaign against Germany and an affirmation of traditional German values. One second here. I am going to take this. I'm going to copy it. We're going to put it over here in something you can't see real quick. And I'm going to attempt to create a modern understanding of what we're looking at. Let's see if I can add a new source here real quick. Screen capture, notepad, add source. Okay, there we go. Now you guys can see what I'm working on. So in this case, we will say tweets publicized these which attacked woke intellectualism, asserted the need to purify the language and literature, and demanded that universities be the center of American thought and nationalism. The students described the action as a response to a worldwide wokeness smear campaign against American and an affirmation of traditional American values. Huh! Weird how easy that was to do, right? So, with almost no trouble at all, I changed the history of placards publicized these, or the theses, which attacked woke or Jewish intellectualism, asserted the need to purify the German language and literature, and demanded that universities be centers of German nationalism. The students described an action as a response to a worldwide Jewish smear campaign against Germany and an affirmation of traditional German values. And with no effort at all, I made the tweets publicly publicized the theses which attacked woke intellectualism and asserted the need to purify the United States language and literature, and demanded that universities be centers of American thought and nationalism. The students described the action as a response to worldwide wokeness smear campaign against American and an affirmation of traditional German values. I should put that as America, not American. Pardon me. But with almost no effort at all, I have taken and modernized a 100-year-old thought and history, updated it to current modern standards, more or less, and made it as coherent and as if you would hear this coming out of the words and voices of the right wing today. So, as we go over this, I want you to just keep in mind how close we are to this being our history, not just Germany's. This could be our future, and it looks like we're heading towards it. In a symbolic act of ominous significance, on May 10th, 1933, university students burned upwards of 25,000 volumes of, quote, un-German books, presaging an era of state censorship and control of culture. An era of state censorship and control of culture. Ooh, they have a video. Let's watch some books being burnt.
Wie in anderen Universitätsstädten Deutschlands wurden undeutsche und unsittliche Bücher von den Studenten eingesammelt und öffentlich verbrannt. Der Scheiterhaufen auf dem Opernplatz in Berlin.
So I don't speak much German, right? I speak like 5 words in German. But I think what I heard from him is that he is saying we are removing the bad from Germany and allowing the the pure German stuff to be seen, or something like that. Oh, look, it's Goebbels. It's Goebbels. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Gobble down that propaganda he wants you to eat.
Eines überspitzten jüdischen Intellektualismus ist nun zu Ende.
I can't watch any more of that. At the meeting places, students threw pillaged and unwanted books into bonfires with great ceremony, a band playing so-called fire oaths. In Berlin, some 40,000 persons gathered to the Opernplatz to hear Joseph Goebbels deliver a fiery address, quote, "No to decadence and moral corruption." Where have we heard that one before? And a yes to decency and morality in family and state. Sorry, what was that? Why did I bring up Stephen Crowder? I don't know. Weird. Which authors and works were targeted? Oh boy. Among authors whose books student leaders burned that night were well-known socialists, such as Bertolt Brecht, August Bebel, the founder of the concept of communism, Karl Marx, critical bourgeoisie writers like the Austrian playwright Arthur Schnitzel, and corrupting foreign influences, among them American author Ernest Hemingway. Which is weird, man. Hemingway that's a weird one to ban. He's kind of like on your side, right? The fires also consumed several writings of 1929 Nobel Prize winning German author Thomas Mann, whose support of the Weimar Republic and critique of fascism raised Nazi ire. Also burned were books of international best-selling author Erich Mara Remarque, Nazi ideologues, vilified remarks. Remarque? Unflinching description of war, all quiet on the Western Front. Apparently there was a movie came out recently. I still need to watch it. As a literary betrayal of the soldiers of the World War. Works by early German literary critics of the Nazi regime were also burned, such as those of Erich Krasner, Heinrich Mann, and Ernest Glacier. Was this Horkheimer? Okay, sorry. Other writers included on the blacklist were American authors Jack London, Theodore Dressler, and Helen Keller, whose belief in social justice encouraged her to champion the disabled, pacifism, and improving conditions for industrial workers and women's voting rights. Well, we can't have that, now can we? Jewish authors numbered among the writers whose works were burned that day. Among them, some of the most famous contemporary writers of the day, such as Franz Werfel, Max Brod, and Stefan Zweig. So, ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Why do totalitarian regimes often target culture? Well, because culture fights them. In this short film, a Holocaust survivor and Iranian author... Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I don't want to watch this right now. We may come back to it. So we're going to go to the Nazi book burnings on Wikipedia, right? And we're going to kind of go through this in a little bit of detail, and then we're going to see how it applies to the Stop Woke Act, right? So we had a bit of this history. The first large burning came on the 6th of May, 4 days before the big one, right? A German student union made an organized attack on Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Research. which, and this is its own whole thing, but it got burned because of intersexuality, homosexuality, and transgender topics. It is assumed that Dora Reicher was the first transgender woman known to have undergone sex reassignment surgery by doctors at the institute that Nazis attacked and burned, was killed during this attack. That's right. Possibly the first transgender woman to ever have undergone sex reassignment surgery was killed by the Nazis while they tried to burn books about the existence of transgender people. So when they, being the right-wing authoritarians, block the ability to talk about sex, gender, and other critical theories, we've gone over critical theory, they burn the books and fucking kill people who they find un-German or un-American or otherwise known as other. And no, my crossing of my arms to do this was not unintentional or for theatrical effect. It was to indicate that everything outside of me is the other that they so desperately want to fight against. On the 10th of May, 1933, students burned un-German books in the square at the State Opera, the Bibelplatz, as we talked about earlier. But they didn't stop there. No, they did not. Because had the Nazis stopped at burning books, history would be very different and probably not include a couple of extraordinarily impressive bombs that got dropped. Cultural genocide in occupied territories. Well, let's first off describe what we mean by cultural genocide. Is a concept which was proposed by lawyer Raphael Lemkin in 1944 as a component of genocide, which is, of course, the killing of an ethnic, national, racial, or religious group, or cultural group, a list of cultural genocides. We'll get to that in a second. Basically, a genocide is whenever you kill a bunch of people for some reason. Cultural genocide is when you kill a culture, which is what the Nazis did when they burned a bunch of books, which again killed people because they didn't like the information they were given through books. They burn books. They kill people because they don't like what they're being taught. Here is a list of the persecuted authors. I'm not going through all of them. Helen Keller published an open letter to German students for all the work, all the good that did. Oh, Heinrich Heine, a German poet, literary critic, well above his time apparently. 1823, where they burn books, they will ultimately also burn people. His books were also burned. Wow, that was fucking prescient of him. 1 year after the mass book burnings, the German Freedom Library, founded by Alfred Kantorowicz, I'm bad at names, was opened to assemble copies of the books that had been destroyed, because the shift in political power and the blatant control and censorship demonstrated by the Nazi Party. 1933 saw a mass exodus of German writers. They went into exile in America, England, and France. On the 10th of May, those writers in exile came together in France and established the library. I bet you that library was burned when they took over France. A similar library, modeled after the one in Paris, was opened at the Brooklyn Jewish Center in Brooklyn, New York, on the 15th of November, later that same year. There were speeches dedicated to Einstein, Lippmann, other folk, I assume. Allied censorship during denazification. In 1946, the Allied occupation authorities drew up a list of over 30,000 titles ranging from school books to poetry, including works of Voschklawitz. Okay, so, we did book burning too, but at least, it's kind of in a denazification way. It's taking away the power of the authoritarians, which is something I'm whole for. Round them up, lock them up. If they have been advocating for anti-democratic stuff, cite them. If they've done anti-democratic stuff, arrest them. If they say, tried to cause an insurrection by storming the Capitol and upsetting the peaceful transition of power, maybe they should be charged as terrorists and domestic terrorists and insurrectionists and traitors, but, just my thought. Okay, so I think we've gotten kind of over what I wanted to talk about when it comes to Florida's actions. So what can we do? Great question. Let us look at Florida's elections for 2022. So for governor, DeSantis won by 20%, give or take. That's a fifth of voters. That's rough. That is a really hard hurdle to get over. It is. It's no way to look at that easily. That is hard to get over. It's hard to get over 60% of people voting for an open fascist. That is hard. And very similarly for the Senate. But that's high level, right? We have 8 Democrats, 20 GOP in the House, and 3 ballot measures were decided. These ballot measures were abolish the Florida Constitution Review Commission. They kept the commission. Nope, they abolished the commission. Amendment 3 allows state lawmakers to increase property tax exemptions for public workers. Allow the expanded tax benefits. Oh boy, I'm sure that's going to go well. Okay, so they kept the commission and they kept the current laws and exemption because they had to hit 60% to go into effect. So it's like a supermajority. Okay. And then Constitutional Amendment 1 allows state lawmakers to expand property tax exemptions for flood-resistant improvements. So what do these 3 ballot measures mean real quick? Let's just take a look at them. A lot of people voted to abolish a group of people who review the Florida Constitution. I assume that's a good thing. Like, I assume being able to review what the Constitution says and give a legal opinion on it is probably a good thing, which is probably what that commission does. Amendment 3 allows state lawmakers to increase property tax exemptions for public workers. I mean, I don't like property being a commodity anyway, so I don't really have any work on this, but I imagine that might have been okay. I have to read it. It's Constitutional Amendment 1. Allow state lawmakers to expand property tax exemptions for flood-resistant improvements. Giving tax breaks to people who can build flood resistance. So it's a tax break for rich people who can afford to be better at not taking damage from floods and get less money taken from them because they weren't flooded. So you're punishing people who get flooded. Cool. Okay, let's go back to this. Again, governor and senate, that's 60%. That's hard, but what we can do about that is, if I have anybody listening in Florida, Progressive Victory 2023, I think they're still doing stuff. Yeah, Progressive Victory is still doing things. So if you want to make a difference in your community, talk to these guys, see how you can get involved in helping people. Every dot is a person or a group of or a community or something helping to do stuff. Seems to be a lot of fucking Florida people. So if you live in Florida and want to help, by God, there's people out there to help you. So what can we do? Individually, help out with bigger people to do more and better things. That's it. We need to get out there and we need to push as hard as we can, because someone's got to, right? All right.